I was happening, y'all. It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and breaking news: the Washington Commanders just cut former first-round pick linebacker Jamon Davis. Also, a Washington Commanders cornerback just got suspended 6 games. What is going on? We also have some other roster moves. Of course, we need to talk about Ron Rivera's failure in his tenure here as a head coach. We're going to dive into all that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for pulling up for every video. I know I've been spamming y'all. It was 3 videos yesterday. We're already 2 videos in today, and I still have like a Jaden Daniels update I want to give y'all injury wise, but it's just been so much chaos going on while I was working on that. This happened, so make sure you stay tuned and pull up to every video. I will be live streaming the upcoming game against the Bears. I'm expecting us to win, Jaden Daniels or not. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so when I first saw this announced by Tom Pelissero, he tweeted, the Commanders released defensive end Jamon Davis. You can call him linebacker, edge rusher, defensive end, whatever you want to call him, just to let you know he is officially cut. And you even have like Cowboys fans in the comment section with several likes saying future Cowboy and things like that. So apparently, I guess one man's trash is another man's treasure, because a lot of people in this fan base, forget even Adam Peters and the team or the coaching staff, whatever, a lot of people in this fan base weren't fans of Jamon Davis, but you see Cowboys fans trying to get a hold of him. I guess their linebacker edge rusher situation must be worse than ours. I don't know. Either way, Jamon Davis was a former 19th overall pick, first round in the 2021 draft. Of course, that draft is famous for having other guys available, like we could have traded up for Michael Parsons, but it is worthy to note that Jamon Davis was drafted after him. But you got to remember that Jamon Davis was drafted before Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who was a one-man war, basically a one-man army against us, with the forced fumble on Terry McLaurin, the red zone interception to Jaden Daniels. I believe he only has 2 all season. JOK was one of them. He was everywhere flying around the field. So of course a lot of us looked back after that Browns game like, man, what could have been? We could have had JOK. But then again, butterfly effect, maybe JOK is so much better than Jamon Davis that we win slightly more games because of the fact that we chose JOK over Jamon Davis. And then we don't have Jaden Daniels right now because we didn't lose enough games. So who knows? I mean, everything is meant to be. It is what it is. But it would be nice to have JOK. But right now he could be available. We've been snooping around and calling about, you know, trying to be buyers before the trade deadline. Maybe that's somebody we're targeting. But either way, Jamon Davis has appeared in 50 games with 36 starts during his 4-year tenure with the team. We didn't pick up his 5th-year option coming into this season, so you already knew it was pretty much cooked. During that time, he recorded 282 tackles, 10 quarterback hits, 7 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. I feel like his best season, you could argue, was maybe like 2022 when he still had Cole Holcomb next to his side, and then Cole Holcomb got hurt, and then that's when Jameis looked a little funny in the light. But then, even last year, against the Falcons, I would say that was probably his most notable game, with the coverage he had on Bijan Robinson to win the game and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he's had flashes. It's not like he's just been a guy that's been bad the whole time. With the Davis release, the Commanders now have an open spot on the 53-man roster. We'll talk about who's potentially going to fill that soon. I have a great idea of who it's going to be. Also, just to let you know, Jamon Davis is 25 years old. Shouts out to my boy Jeremy Brenner on Sports Illustrated. He said that he took a step back this season after being a starter in each of the past 2 years. And Davis made 5 appearances for the Commanders in the first 6 weeks of this season, but didn't play a whole lot. He was inactive, a healthy scratch going into that Ravens game, along with another Rivera first-round pick, Emmanuel Forbes. The additions of linebackers Dante Fowler, Bobby Wagner, and Frankie Louvu pushed Davis down the depth chart severely, and Jordan McGee, who is now probably about to come up off of IR officially, is probably going to be the one to take his spot. But again, we'll dive into that soon. I want to focus on Jamon Davis first. First of all, shouts out to my boy Mark Bullock out there in the UK. I completely agree. When he said expectations for Davis at defensive end were unrealistic, to be honest. Yes, he's a great athlete, but he's never shown a great deal of pass rush ability at linebacker. He doesn't also have bend, man. He's still pretty athletic when it comes to being out in open space, so I still firmly to this day but feel like he would have been better at off-ball linebacker, especially with Frankie Louvo and Bobby Wagner having to play in a ridiculous amount of snaps, literally almost every snap, every game so far this season. I feel like he could have at least relieved them of that a little bit. I feel like he's more of like an off-ball linebacker than an edge rusher than like a Micah Parsons, but just simply because of his lack of bend. Now, he did show in the preseason that he could, maybe with some agility make a move, and then he had some good coverage out in space where I forgot the quarterback was in the preseason, but he tried to run out and escape the pocket. Jamon Davis hawked him down and then had the athleticism to jump up and bat the ball down. And then the play right after that was when he faked an outside move to the tackle and then came back inside with his agility and was able to get a strip sack on the quarterback. And then even week 1 against the Buccaneers, he showed some flashes even in the limited amount of time that he played. But I still feel like he was better at off-ball linebacker just based off of his athletic traits than an edge rusher. He doesn't have any bend. He's a freak athlete, but relative athletic scores, even though he's a 9-point something, doesn't account for a lack of bend. And he just doesn't have it. That was just never really meant to be. Continuing with Mark Bullock's tweet, moving him to defensive end in the final year of his contract was always a long shot. Any position change, especially in the final year of your contract, is always going to be really tough to overcome. As much as some people thought that he could be Parsons. Again, when you're looking at the relative athletic score, that's where the argument can be made that, hey, this guy can be Micah Parsons. But when you actually watch the tape, when you watch the lack of bend, Micah Parsons has been, Jamin Davis doesn't. Micah Parsons had pass rush moves, even though he played off-ball linebacker the majority of college. He still came with at least a little bit of pass rushing experience. Jamon Davis, not necessarily. He was more of like a coverage linebacker. Micah Parsons was more of like a pure off-ball, stopping the run, and can occasionally rush the passer linebacker coming out of Penn State. But there was always the argument that, like, okay, Dan Quinn was the one that saw that Micah Parsons was an off-ball linebacker in college and turned him into one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Maybe he could do the same thing with Jamon Davis. Of course, we've seen that it hasn't worked out because, again, he lacks a lot of the athletic traits that it takes to be that, most notably lack of bend. I want to keep emphasizing that's why Jamon Davis never worked out an edge rusher. Again, me personally, I would have tried him at off-ball linebacker again, because really he had some pretty good seasons whenever he had an off-ball linebacker, a true Mike linebacker, greened out in the helmet, quarterback of the defense, receiving the defensive play calls from the defensive coordinator and making sure that everybody's good, aka what Bobby Wagner's doing this season. Even Cody Barton, he wasn't good last year, but while Cody Barton was healthy, Jamon Davis played at a higher level last year. Before Cole Holcomb got hurt in 2022, Jamon Davis played at a decent level. I'm not going to say high like he was a Pro Bowler, but he played well enough to, like, you shouldn't have to cut him going into week 8 of a regular season. So I don't know. I just felt like if we would have put him back at off-ball linebacker, especially now that we have Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvo, all you got to do is just be good out in space and occasionally cover a guy. I feel like Jamon Davis could have worked out, especially since we couldn't get anything for him. It'd be different if we traded him for a 7th, and I'd be like, okay, you can see the argument that we got some draft capital out of it, but to just straight up cut him, I still feel like he has some talent. And again, you even see Cowboys fans out there saying, hey, we'll take him, please, type of situation. But either way, what's done is done. Shouts out to Ryan Cooley, because I agree. He said Jamon Davis has had some rough luck in the NFL. Drafted too early led to unfair expectations, even though I know he's not complaining about the first round money he got. But of course, if Jamon Davis were a 3rd round pick, none of us would be complaining about how his career turned out. I mean, still, he hasn't lived up to even 3rd round pick expectations, but the 1st round pick made it like way worse. He also changed positions 3 times in 4 years, will linebacker, then true Mike linebacker due to injury, and then pure edge rusher. Lord have mercy. The new regime comes in and starts over, leaving Davis on the outside looking in, and then he also finished it by saying, I still think he can be a good player in this league. Will he ever live up to a 1st round pick? Doubt it. But can he still contribute onto a winning team? I truly believe so. Even just this year wise, week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he had a 78.8 Pro Football Focus grade with an 83.8 run defense grade. He was great against them. He had some elite run stops, even like their Pro Bowl left tackle. He embarrassed them like a couple of snaps in that game. So I was like, okay, maybe Jamon Davis at edge rusher, even if he's not a good pass rusher, because again, the lack of bend, maybe he could do something against the run with some strength. And then weeks 3 through 5, again, he didn't play week 2, he didn't play week 6, healthy scratch against the Ravens week 6, but in those in-between games, he still wasn't terrible. His lowest grade was a 57.2 overall in those 3 games. And then just most recently against the Carolina Panthers, who have a really good offensive line. That's the strength of their team. He had an 84.1 Pro Football Focus grade, a very high grade. I felt like he also played well, even though he barely played. He only played like 16 snaps. A lot of them were in garbage time, but he managed to get a pressure then. He managed to get a tackle, a run stop, all of that type of stuff. I felt like he contributed, and even though he played very sparingly, he was fairly efficient, especially against the Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I was seeing the potential. Also, you can also see the growth. I mean, of course, I don't always agree with Pro Football Focus. I don't take their word and their grades as gospel, but I agree with the fact that in 2021, he was a 46.8 overall grade. Then he got better. 2022, 62.9 overall grade. Then he got better. 2023, 67.6 overall grade. And then this season, his highest grade of his career, literally every year, he's just gone higher and higher and higher with his overall grade. So far through 2024, he has a 71.2 overall grade. And I feel like that's not a guy that's just worth cutting. I feel like that's a guy that maybe he sticks around and you figure something out. But I guess they were just ready to move on, and they were just tired of trying to figure out how to get him to work and be effective and efficient out there. Again, I would have moved him to off-ball linebacker, but it is what it is. It's not like we just lost this, oh my God, how dare you cut him type of guy. But I am a little surprised that we couldn't at least get something, like at least a 7th round pick for him or something, because right now, though, I can admit this trade deadline has been disrespectful to sellers right now, but great for buyers. Like Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper each going for 3rd round picks and some conditions and late round swaps and things like that. And then the Rams willing to pay another team, willing to pay to take on some of Cooper Kupp's salary just to trade him for a 2nd round pick right now. So I guess right now veteran value is just down league wide right now leading up to this trade deadline, which is good news for the Commanders overall with us wanting to be buyers at the trade deadline. But if you're a seller, if you're trying to get rid of a player, it's not looking good for you. And that's probably what led to us just going ahead and saying, man, let's just go ahead and get rid of Jamon Davis. Nobody is even picking up the phone for him right now for even a 7th round pick. Shouts out to Grant Paulson, because I agree with this. He said the fact that the Commanders just mentioned the Jamon Davis news among other guys like Sheldrick Redwine speaks volumes. Like they didn't even say separately Jamon Davis has been cut separately, and then the other things. It was all the same exact announcement, same tweet that we cut Jamon Davis, and then we're going to talk about those other moves soon, but they were all just released at the same time, kind of like just in a bunch. Like if you didn't read it carefully, you wouldn't have even noticed that we just cut a former 1st round pick. And then continuing with Grant Paulson's tweet, just the last guy on the roster getting waived a few years after being drafted in the top 20. The previous regime's drafts were horrendous. Also going to Chris Russell, I agree. Goes without saying that the release of Jamon Davis is another example of the failures of Rivera and the Marty Party, but most importantly, the attrition is often felt further down the line. I agree. You don't usually feel like the actual real negative effects of a bad draft until way later. It's not usually right away. They are now without a receiver and edge linebacker along with CY from 2023. He also went on to say, when you don't have anything to show for all these 1st round picks, yes, the easiest thing to do is say the Rivera regime stunk, but it means you have to spend more in free agency or plug holes with other picks instead of just improving the roster. Basically, you're trying to make up for the failures that Rivera made before we can even move on and start to add to the greatness that Adam Peters has. They have to basically, they're not even starting from ground zero. They're starting from a few steps behind in the race and having to make up for that just to get neutral, and then we can work on being great. But even somehow we're still 5-2. Just shows the greatness of Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury, all of these guys, and what we're doing already. Because I mean, this is even more impressive of the fact that when you think about Rivera's 1st round draft picks just alone, but his entire drafts, how much that set us back the past 4 years. Like I said, after the Ravens game, if you compare us to the Ravens, they've like a lot of the talent that contributed to how they beat us, like Kyle Hamilton, we could have gotten him. We chose to trade back and ended up taking Jahan Dotson, and it's just like we ended up trading Jahan Dotson for a 3rd round pick. Just that example alone, Kyle Hamilton out here laying big hits on our players and playing well in coverage versus Jahan Dotson, who's not even on our team. Like that's just one specific example of dozens how Rivera set us back compared to other great teams in the NFL right now. And the fact that we're still competing with these guys is insane. I'm not gonna lie. That's even more of a salute to Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, what they have going on. And just one offseason, just 7 weeks in. But speaking of Ron Rivera's 1st rounders, 4 of them. Chase Young, 2020, traded to the 49ers, now with the Saints. Jamon Davis, 2021, released today. Jahan Dotson, 2022, traded to the Eagles. And Emmanuel Forbes, 2023, rookie struggles. Only 2 career interceptions, just got one that was thrown directly to him by Andy Dalton just this past Sunday. The Commanders are now 5-2 in year 1 of new leadership, even with all of those mistakes. And mind you, Emmanuel Forbes is Ron Rivera's last remaining first-round pick on the Commanders roster, and he was a healthy scratch just 2 weeks ago against the Baltimore Ravens because they felt like he wasn't even good enough to play. Also, only 12 of the Commanders' 43 draft picks, 28% from 2019 to 2023, is still on the roster, and we're going back to 2019, so that's Jay Gruden's last year. That's not Ron Rivera. That's why it includes Terry McLaurin, 2019 third-round pick. Then you have Samuel Cosmi, second-round pick from Ron Rivera. Shouts out to him. Benjamin St. Juste, I know a lot of us aren't necessarily fans of him, but 2021 third-round pick. De'Ami Brown, 2021 third-round pick. He's starting to show flashes now, especially that he's learning how to separate underneath. He's not just a one-trick pony beating teams deep down the field, taking the lid off the defense. John Bates has been a constant contributor as one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, 2021 fourth-round draft pick. Derek Forrest, 2021 fifth-round pick. He's barely played this season, but he's here. He's a special teams contributor at least. Darian Mathis is starting to gain a rhythm. I still don't think he was worthy of a second-round pick in 2022, but he's gaining rhythm. Brian Robinson, great pick, 2022 third-round pick. Percy Butler, great pick, fourth-round pick in 2022. Chris Paul, 2022 seventh-round pick, inactive on game days, but a decent backup if anything were to happen. Emmanuel Forbes, of course, your 2023 first-round pick, and then Quan Martin, your 2023 second-round pick. That's a decent pick there as well. Outside of all of that, terrible. Absolutely terrible, and there's a reason that these guys are not on the roster. But now, after cutting Jamon Davis, that opens up a roster spot. Who was that for? Like I briefly mentioned earlier, Jordan McGee, whose now 21-day window comes to a close tomorrow. Remember, if you allow somebody that's on the injured reserve to start the practice, they have 21 days for you to officially upgrade them to the active 53-man roster. If not, you're not allowed to finesse the NFL. You're not going to get away with it because now that player is permanently on the injured reserve, no matter how healthy they are for the remainder of the season. So as of tomorrow, you got to go ahead and upgrade Jordan McGee no matter what. So I'm assuming he's going to be the one that takes that roster spot. Speaking of Ben Standig, shouts out to him for this tweet. He said linebacker Jordan McGee should be activated off of the injured reserve this week. That means opening a roster spot. Davis, the former Mike linebacker turned outside linebacker turned edge, gets the axe. That's literally why this happened. Maybe there's a world where he comes back to the practice squad, but I doubt it right now. Would guess another team bites on the athleticism. I completely agree. I highly doubt. I know a lot of fans are down on Jamon Davis, but I would be shocked if he ends up on our practice squad. If he does, cool. I'd be happy. I'd be happy to be wrong because again, I haven't fully given up on Jamon Davis like most of the fan base has. But again, that's just too much athleticism and too much flash we've seen just from this year alone for another team not to pick him up. Especially you even see again Dallas Cowboys fans wanting to get him. Also, this now means that Javonte Jean-Baptiste being on IR, Jonathan Allen being out for season, Dorrance Armstrong being hurt as well. I'm not even sure if he'll be ready to play against the Chicago Bears after missing the last week and a half against the Baltimore Ravens and Carolina Panthers. The report that the Commanders are trying to trade for Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns must be a real thing. Obviously, Jamon Davis was like a big part of what the Commanders had going on. It's not like we just have a big hole in our roster because we cut Jamon Davis, but it seems like we are making a lot of roster moves right now to prepare for something. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I mean, there have already been reports of the Commanders calling teams and trying to contact players and their agents as far as like edge rusher and wide receiver goes right now, and it seems like Adam Peters is trying to get this roster ready. That's just me though. Also, along with releasing Jamon Davis, Washington signed safety Ben Nickel, the undrafted free agent, and wide receiver Michael Strachan to the practice squad, and released Sheldrick Redwine, the safety, from the practice squad. So now that's 2 additions to the practice squad. That's 1 loss from the practice squad. I'm assuming there will be another loss to the practice squad. I'm assuming we'll see, because again, the active roster spot that we now have open from the cutting of Jamon Davis, I'm pretty sure is going to Jordan McGee. We'll see. Also, shouts out to this interaction between Connor Eastwood and Mark Bullock. Connor brings up a good point. He said, imagine how different this roster looks if the front office just followed the consensus and literally just took who they were supposed to take, who everybody thought they would take in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Because that would be Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah instead of Jamon Davis. That would be Chris Olave instead of Jahan Dotson, along with Jamison Williams or Kyle Hamilton, and then that would be Christian Gonzalez instead of Emmanuel Forbes. Not saying you should just go with the mob, but they consistently reached down the board for zero reason at all, with no reward at all. And then shouts out to Mark Bullock. He brings up a good point, because I agree with both. And I don't mind a regime drafting guys that they believe in. More likely to make it work with those guys than guys that they don't believe in, but are the consensus better players. But also, every move of the Rivera regime led to Peters, Quinn, and Jaden Daniels, so all good. Now, I completely agree. Not only could you make an argument that it's our karma, but also we probably wouldn't have been bad enough to get a Jamon Davis in the draft if we would have made those different. It's the JOK, Chris Olave, and Christian Gonzalez instead of Jamon Davis, Jahan Dotson, and Emmanuel Forbes. We probably wouldn't even been bad enough to even have the second overall pick to take Jaden Daniels. Maybe we're not even bad enough because Ron Rivera has a couple of good drafts, and he took those successful players. Maybe we haven't even fired him yet. And maybe Martin Mayhew was still our GM, Ron Rivera still our head coach, instead of us having Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. So it's kind of like we really just had to suffer and be really terrible and just make every bad decision at every chance that we could to end up where we are now. Maybe the sacrifice is worth it, is Mark Bullock's point, like I brought up briefly earlier. And then also, before we get up out of here, in random news, but it's still pretty drastic, the Washington Commanders cornerback Kevon Seymour just got suspended 6 games for violating the PED policy. And just to let you know, he was a reserve corner. He's mostly just played special teams. That's about it. He's now been suspended 6 games without pay for violating the NFL's performance enhancing substance policy. Seymour will be eligible for reinstatement on December 2nd following the Commanders' Week 13 game versus Tennessee, but I'm pretty sure they have no serious urges to try to bring him back. Also, just to let you know, Washington Commanders signed Seymour to the practice squad back in September, and so far he's only played in 2 games this year and had 17 special team snaps. That is it. So this is not a guy that we're just gonna super duper miss. Like, if we don't miss Jamon Davis, we definitely don't miss this guy. Also, shouts out to Resh Manuel because he brings up a good point. Maybe we should go and look and re-sign Tariq Castro Fields with the, now we pretty much, Kevon Seymour suspended 6 games. We're about to cut him. Go ahead and bring up Tariq Castro Fields and see how that goes. And shouts out to my boy Mark Phillips because he worded it perfectly, man. It is amazing that a 4-year period of Commanders drafts would have actually been better if they just did it by fan vote. It's crazy that that's actually true. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. At this point, I'm coming out with 3 videos a day this week with all of the stuff that's going on. So make sure you pull up to every one of them. If you haven't checked for my channel all day, make sure you go check because I probably more than likely have uploaded another video since the last time you looked. Definitely make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like, and of course let me know in the comment section, how do you feel about this Jamon Davis cut? Do you agree or disagree with any of my points or any of the points that I brought up in this video? Do you feel like we should have kept them? Do you feel like we should at least try to bring him back to the practice squad? Would you be surprised if another team picks him up and he has some sort of success on another team? Let me know how you feel about this entire Jamon Davis situation, and also the cornerback that we cut, Mr. Seymour, that is now suspended for 6 games. Well, we haven't even cut him yet, but I'm assuming that we will cut him. But let me know how you feel about all of that. Of course, I'm gonna try my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.